Today we have Abraham and Kevin from Service Master. The reason we're here is they are considered first responders in the world of first response. I worked for FEMA for 4.5 years, so I'm very familiar with the first responder team outfits and things that they do. But as we continue on, once a month, we're going to try to bring in a speaker on a different subject matter. Next month, we have a guy from title insurance coming in commercial and tell us what he can do for us in title and marketing and all that other things about getting your name out there and finding business. Then we move on to, we're going to have an attorney come in. The attorney's going to talk about probate and trusts and how to keep your real estate business out of that. I do a lot of probate real estate, and the one thing I rarely see is commercial real estate going through probate courts, but it does happen, and they're very hard and rare to find. Then we'll be moving on to business opportunities, and anyways, we've got speakers lined up all the way into June right now, or July, actually into July. And our July speaker is going to be talking about California Association of Realtors, all the forms used in commercial real estate that CAR has put out. What are the changes? What isn't here? What you have to be aware of? What you have to pay attention to?
No AIR forms?
No.
Okay.
No. So bottom line is we're trying to find everybody once a month to come in here and give this group, some more what I call network and learn sessions. So Abraham Klapp is the West Coast representative for business development at the Service Master. As the business development manager, Abraham's duty includes seeking out property owners, managers, governmental agencies to be a critical component to help post man-made or natural disasters. Service Master is considered a first responder service provider. As a first responder, they are often at the forefront of a disaster recovery response efforts. According to FEMA, disaster recovery is aligned in the order of individual assistance, public assistance, and mitigation. So, by the way, California has been declared a disaster zone, but it's only under public assistance, not individual assistance. Why is that important? If it's individual assistance, any transaction you have in escrow will not fund unless an appraiser goes back out to the property to make sure it's not damaged by the disaster. Public assistance is dealing with roads, highways, waterways, dams, levees, all that other stuff. So that's more in that line where we're at right now. And then the mitigation portion is once we had a disaster, part of the declaration, if it's so put in the declaration. Under the federal efforts, I just divided it in 3 groups. So at this point in time, I'll let
thanks, Greg.
Abraham and
Kevin.
his side banana.
Sure.
Okay.
Sidecar.
I like that.
Thanks, Greg. This is Kevin Wright. He is one of our partners and owners, and he's our vice president of sales. And one of the reasons I asked Kevin to be here is that he is a native to Southern California and has got a lot of experience ancillary to just restoration. And so a lot of you have different backgrounds in here. And I thought not only could Kevin help me with my presentation with maybe some more in-depth questions, but there's a couple of people in here, and I'm thinking about you, William, afterwards, like the Vegas, the Builders Show. So I was going to maybe put you in touch with him for that. So I wanted Kevin.
I got tickets for you and whoever wants to go and their friends. They're not cheap tickets, but so if you even sponsor.
Yeah, no. So it's a great opportunity, and so that's one of the reasons.
No, I just have
yeah.
clients and stuff. They give me tickets. They want me to go there. So
Yeah, but so afterwards, if there's the other questions or maybe some networking stuff that you might have with Kevin, I wanted to bring him as an extra resource. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. I passed out a card right here of our core services, and I'm going to spend probably about 15 or 20 minutes just kind of briefly going through and explaining what we do for each of these. And then Greg was kind enough to put together some questions that he thought most people in here would have. And so what I'll do is I'll spend the second half of my time going through that. Morning, Chip.
Okay.
And then if you have any questions, there's a spot on the back. Just kind of write down any questions you have, and then I'll answer those at the end. Service Master Restoration is a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year emergency response company. We are franchised, but we also have a corporate office in the southeast that allows us to be flexible and having 5 or 6 franchise owners that got together and can run the business how they like, but also have the support of a corporate office and the structure that you get with a CRM and the network that goes with that.
$5.
In fact, this year we became a Service Master SRM, which stands for Service Recovery Management. And as I've said in here before, not only do we handle small losses, that you would have in your house, but we can handle full-scale buildings that are destroyed in disasters. And so we're part of a group that we got that this year. It's called the SRM group, and they are the team that gets deployed anywhere in the country if there's a major disaster, and we're really excited about that. So that's a new thing for us, So with that, the water and the fire restoration is what most people know us for. A lot of people just assume we're a couple guys in a van. We're definitely not. If you look at all the locations we've got, we're probably have better coverage than any other restoration company in the Southwest. You've got the advantage of working with us, one point of contact from Vegas all the way to Oceanside up to Ventura. So most of the other people that do what we do, they're small little franchises. Just because you may think you're dealing with one company, you might actually be dealing with different people. And like, for example, I know Lou was just talking about he's got 7 or 8 properties. Well, if those are all over the place and you're dealing with just one point of contact versus 5 or 6, I mean, you can just do the math on how much time you'd be saving. So that's one of the advantages of working with us. So water and fire restoration. So I'm going to talk a little bit more on the commercial side because that's what I'm focused on. But if you have, I'll give a real life example. 2 Saturday nights ago, we got a phone call at 10 o'clock at night on the 4th floor of an apartment building. Somebody for about a year had been deciding to hang up their clothes on a hanger on one of the sprinkler heads. We've been doing it for a year, thought that there was nothing wrong with it. Well, it popped off a couple Saturday nights ago. And so what we do is we get that phone call 10 o'clock at night and we send a crew out there immediately and we start setting up fans and dehumidifiers and try to mitigate that situation after the fire department obviously has been there also and they get it shut off. And the reason that that's important is everybody knows water damage is the worst. You want to handle that right away, especially in a really large building like that. So if any of you have any experience with the tall high-rises, those typically, I kind of focus on those because those are the worst when those happen. This one was on the 4th floor, top floor of the building. Obviously, it's going through to each floor beneath. We're really good at responding to those types of losses. So, in fact, on my card is my phone number, and then we have an 800 number. So basically the idea is you can call me anytime, day or night. If I don't answer, please leave a message. I'm kind of an insomniac. I'm up, half the time at night anyway, and I check my phone. So if you leave me a message, I can call you back. And then we got another number here for 24.
And the big thing you're trying to prevent when there's water damage is if the moisture stays in the building, then you have a mold problem, which is absolutely much worse than the water.
100%. Yeah. So
secondary damage. Yeah, that's our job, is to prevent that from happening. And in our business, response time, like Abe said, is critical. And being one of the larger service providers in Southern California, we're not going to tell you we're going to be there in a half an hour if it takes us 2 hours to get there. We're very realistic on traffic and situations and all that. So, yeah, response time.
And by the way, our goal for response time is 2 hours.
Or less.
Or less. Yeah, it's within 2 hours.
We could have a truck, a mile away, or we could have all of our trucks in a large loss. Worst case, it would be 2 hours. Best case, it could be 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know when I called Abraham about the roof collapse at one of the industrial buildings I managed, they were there the very next day at the time that they set, and they had Abraham.
That's Chris Williams. Yeah.
Abraham and his professional were there, and then I got a call back from one of your engineers, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're right on the ball.
Cool. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Lou. As Lou said, actually, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the third bullet point, is the mold remediation, right? So as he said, that's so important to dry the water out quickly because it loves to eat drywall. For whatever reason, it just feasts on that. And there's different categories of water. And so there's basically 3 categories, and all you need to know is that category 1 is the clean water that you would get out of your faucet, right? It's pretty pure. And then category 3 would be something that you would get like from outside, or sewage water, right? So it's completely filthy. And the higher the number, the faster the mold grows, right? So if you have water intrusion from outside, it's really important to get it dried immediately, and have any areas that won't dry or are affected cut out, because mold spores will spread. And Lou had talked about this a little bit last week. The thing with mold is that you could have absolutely no reaction to it, or you could have a reaction that made you look like you're on chemo. And so we've got different people that have worked with ServiceMaster that kind of told some stories about how, you know, they've gone into people's homes and seen like the family picture, and there's this beautiful woman, and then they look and they're like, wow, what caused this? And it was mold. So that's the thing, is you just can't predict how it'll affect people. And so if you're managing a property, I mean, you always want to err on the side of caution.
Can I say something on that?
Oh, yeah.
So we're not, so what we usually do is hire an industrial hygienist to come in and do testing. We don't do the exact testing. So when we identify that a property does have mold, we're bringing a third party, or you guys are bringing a third party. You guys might have your own testing company that you use. They'll come in, take air samples, swabs, whatever. It lets us know what kind of mold, how much mold, different mold, spore counts and all that. So based on that report, we can begin our job to remediate and then do our job. After our job's complete, I highly recommend hiring back that company or a different company to come in and do a clearance test. And that'll give your either homeowner or tenant, peace of mind, saying, hey, we hired ServiceMaster. It's just one more layer of protection for you guys, saying, hey, we hired this company, they got clearance, here's a certificate.
You had the question.
Oh, sure.
Different types of mold. Yeah.
I was saying, I didn't know there were different types of mold.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I can't pronounce half of them. I mean, there are all these, aspergillosaurus, I mean,
I just
it's,
thought mold and mold.
no, mold's not mold. There's much different kinds of mold, and some are more toxic than others.
So to give you an idea, when you eat bread and you get that green mold on it, when bread gets old, it gets green spots, that's mold. But that mold creates penicillin. So not all molds are harmful.
Right.
Yeah, and the problem with mold is it's a respiratory hazard.
It is.
Yes.
I mean, when you have a tenant living in a house and using a bathroom that's got mold in it, first thing that happens when you raise the rent, he says, oh no, I've got health issues, so I'm gonna have to go see a lawyer.
Yeah.
Then you really got problems.
That's a red
So
flag.
actually, that's one of the reasons that you want to reach out to us when you have an issue like this, because we're professionals that have been doing this a long time. And to Kevin's point, so we don't do any testing in-house. The reason we don't do that is it would be a conflict of interest, right? I mean, but we have really good relationships with all kinds of testing companies. In fact, there were some people last week here that asked for the mold remediation company I work with. It's called Bye Bye Mold. So if any of you need a testing company, we have different ones we work with. I can always refer one. And then kind of going back up to the second bullet point is the fire restoration. So we can do fire restoration from like a house fire all the way up to, I don't know if any of you remember last spring, there was that fire up in the Laguna Niguel Hills that affected about 25 houses. We can handle any size fire, right? So we can handle a small fire that's, in your kitchen, from like the toaster burning all the way up to, fire damage on the outside of your house, smoke damage coming in from like a large scale fire. So, and then also to the contents inside. A lot of people are surprised when they find out actually what can be saved. So if you know anybody that, that's gone through a fire, commercial or residential, we've got the ability to save a lot of things, documents. If it can be saved, we've got the ability to do it. So that's the fire. And then also we do contents. So like, let's say, you had a giant fire and half of your house was destroyed, but the other half is still there. All your stuff is good, but the contents, they've got smoke damage, and now you're gonna also need some place to store it while the house is being fixed. We have a huge temperature controlled warehouse. In fact, we've got several of them. So we do contents storage. And so what we could do is pull everything out of your house or business that had smoke damage or that needed to be moved out of the way while the repair is done. We put it in our warehouse, we store it, we charge a fee for it, and we put it all back, just like a moving company. So we're a full service restoration provider in that sense. We handle everything from the first phone call all the way to the end.
Does homeowners insurance cover that?
So a lot of times it depends on the policy. But yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: my renter's insurance policy, I have that coverage. And also too, for those of you that don't know, renter's insurance, especially for personal, it's really cheap. It's less than like $20 a month for really good coverage. So, you know, I highly recommend that you not only have it if you rent, or if you're renting properties, that you require the people to have it. In fact, that probably is could be a big issue for certain people in here. Is that if you require your renters to have renter's insurance, you're being proactive on a whole set of problems later. So if there is a problem, they got renter's insurance. Most of the time, not only is there contents coverage, but there's usually coverage for them to stay somewhere, and then you don't have to worry about all that. It's kind of already taken care of. So I would definitely recommend, making your tenants have renter's insurance. So one of the reasons Greg asked me to do this presentation is there's so many different things that we do that people just kind of never really heard of, and just given our size, we have some capabilities that maybe even some of the other service masters don't have. And one of them is odor removal and deodorization. So we can do a lot of work like in hotels, like say there's like smoke damage, or like from like cigarettes or marijuana, or maybe like there were pets and there's like, you know, went to the bathroom on the carpet, there's like a urine smell. We can go in and treat all that with non-toxic materials overnight. And then in the morning, you turn on the lights, you open up the shades, and it dissolves, and the odor's gone, it disinfects it. And so we've got like some different high-end products that can work with spot treatments. And then if that doesn't work, you can go to some other, more extreme steps, which we do as well. So some people I know they're eating, but this is kind of the part of the job that's like micro dirty jobs, right? So for part of the odor removal and deodorization, that kind of falls into also the decontamination and the trauma and biohazard. So we do a lot of work with assisted living, and sometimes we get calls like, one of my clients is Leisure World, and there's just so many units in there, and things happen. Sometimes people, they pass away, they don't have any family, they're in there for a couple days. Well, as you can imagine, it's after the sheriff's department has gone in and done what they need to do. Somebody needs to go in and take care of that and work with the family and kind of get that unit back to where it needs to be. Go ahead.
Quick question. Everything you're talking about, you guys provide. Is this what you're talking about provided by all service masters?
No. So I don't remember if you were here for the beginning, but we're all franchises.
Yeah, I know.
And what happened is that we were 5 different franchises. I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago now. They combined, and so what ended up happening is they ended up being the 3rd largest service master franchise in the country. And because there's so many different types of franchises combined, that's part of the reason we've got such a breadth of capabilities. Right. So Kevin he was one of the owners. And he came together with the other ones. And so Kevin, not to get too much off topic, but it was more on the janitorial side. Mm-hmm. So that gives us a lot of capabilities that maybe other just restoration service masters couldn't do. Right. So it gives us some wiggle room, and we do some other projects. Like cleaning around properties. Right. So
homeless encampments, graffiti, pressure washing. Mm-hmm. Homeless encampment's really a big problem. We're getting a large one right now, and it's hopefully with the new mayor in Los Angeles, everyone's optimistic, but homeless encampments are a big problem.
Yeah, and that actually leads right into, that was the other part of the biohazard. So
Okay.
we get calls a lot from different properties that have like homeless encampments, like he was saying, and so we'll go to the actual property, we'll clean everything up, but sometimes there's things like needles, there's feces. I mean, it can be kind of bad, and so we go and we take care of the whole thing. We take pictures for our client afterwards, and it's a nice service, right? Because this is stuff that we do a lot of the work that people don't really want to do, those dirty jobs. So
I had a close relative that was living in a single-wide mobile home that became a hoarder because of mental problems.
Yeah.
And after 10, 12 years, they wouldn't let me inspect the mobile home, and when I did, immediately I called a biohazard firm to empty it out. And we put them in independent living. And it was so bad, they had to, the toilet and the sink in the bathroom had to be replaced because they were so badly stained. They couldn't be cleaned, and the carpet had to be ripped up, couldn't be cleaned. And the place had to have an ozone generator in it for several days just to get the smell out of it. And yeah, it's a whole.
It's the real deal.
It's no joke. So Lou brought up a good point. So hoarding has become an increasing issue, just in the general population, and we specialize in that. So not only do we know how to do the technical work, we've got training for the emotional aspect of it too, right? Because as any of you know, if any of you have ever met a hoarder, right, there's that whole other aspect to it. If you don't address that part of the issue, if you don't train people to know how to deal with hoarders, then you're setting yourself up for kind of a bad situation. So we have people that are, in fact, I've gone out, her name's Lena, she's one of our other sales reps. She's from Sweden, and she's just unbelievable. I've seen her go out on some of these calls where there's just these really just horrible hoarding situations, and she's, in particular, is really good. She's the one that kind of trained me just kind of how to talk to people and understand really what's going on with them. But that's a good opportunity to highlight, our name, Service Master. The Master is highlighted, and I'm not sure if any of you are religious. I'm not particularly religious, but I'm spiritual. But the Master stands for the Creator, for God. And so the idea is that we do everything with the idea of being of service. Right, so you don't necessarily have to be religious to get behind that, but what we want to do is be of service to other people, and so that really is at the heart of everything we do. And the hoarding, in particular, that really highlights that we really take the extra mile to learn how to deal with those situations and those people, because at the end of the day, these are people, right, that we're trying to go in and help.
It's not because you get into certain situations where you look at the facility and you go, oh my God.
Well, there's that too. Right? Yeah.
I've had a few of those.
And so I already mentioned that we do like the pack outs and storage. That's kind of similar to contents. But I just want to throw something out here. Recently I had somebody with like an assisted living high rise. They were doing pest control. And they were looking for somebody to come in and basically remove all the furniture, floor by floor, so they could come in and treat it for pests and then move everything back. Those are the type of projects that we really do well. We've got lots of storage, we've got lots of manpower for that. And so that's just something kind of, outside of the box that most people wouldn't think of that we would do all day long. Also, we do board ups and tarping. So, I know the rain's kind of already left us here, but if you, for some reason you had an issue and you needed a temporary tarping, we do that. And we also do board ups. So if you've got a business that's got a window that's been broken or whatever, we do board ups all day long. And then we've got catastrophe recovery. Kevin and I are part of a team that's really more of what that SRM is sort of important for. Where we travel, usually it's about once a year, where we travel to wherever a catastrophe or hurricane hits. And we're part of a team that deploys, and we take generators, we take RVs, we take all the equipment that we have here, we take it and we deploy, and then we're of service to whatever areas it hits. So this year we were in Fort Myers Beach in the surrounding areas. We were there for about 2 months this year, but like I was saying, we've got the capability to go in and do anything from bringing in cranes to remove boats from our property, then to start clearing it out, to start the process of drying it out, and then all the way back to a full rebuild. And so, if we can do something like that at that scale, really we're capable of doing anything.
No, but if it's in Florida and you're out here on the West Coast, do you do the major stuff and then turn it over to the local franchisee, or what?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, we work real close with the local guys. Like Abe said, we're one of the third largest service masters in the country. So when an event like that hits a certain area, a lot of these service masters are smaller and they need assistance. So we'll mobilize. They'll call us and a couple other service masters, and we'll mobilize and assist local service masters. So we'll do the dry out and then turn that over to them, and then they'll do the rebuild.
Okay.
We're not
Makes sense.
exactly.
Yeah, and also too, the residential. When we go to for these catastrophes, we're really just focused on commercial buildings. So, but we do offer a lot of assistance, right? Like Kevin said, there's other smaller service masters that are just helping people. So as we're driving around, you know, a lot of times people will grab me and ask if I can help them, and even though I might not be the person, we put them in touch with people. And also too, we're really good about carrying like extra water, extra food. You know, 2 years ago, the disaster was in Louisiana, and I mean, just some of these poor people are just really destitute. And so, you know, that's actually the other big part of it, is like we're there to help people rebuild their buildings and put their lives back together, but we're also there just, you know, to offer, you know, a helping hand, just to help in any way we can. So, you know, that's one of the biggest reasons I do it. I get a lot out of that. And then also too, we are working on our asbestos abatement license in California. We do it in-house over in Nevada, and we do it in some of the other states that we've, you know, deployed to. We're working on our California license, but we have a sub that we use real closely with any asbestos issues that come up. So again, we could handle that if it came up. And then, you know, it seems like it's not really coming up so much anymore, but like the COVID-19 cleaning, you know, if you were to have, you know, if COVID-19, I guess, makes a resurgence, or if you were to have maybe like a flu outbreak or cold outbreak at your business, you know, we can come in and do that deep cleaning. We do a lot of this for schools and different government entities that are required to do that. And so it's like a real deep cleaning. And then I don't know if any of you watch like UFC fights or some of the fights over in Vegas, but like, you know, we've got a gig where we actually go and clean the rings in between matches and stuff. And so, you know, we're kind of known for, you know, just kind of getting in there and disinfecting, you know, to the max real quickly. So,
I'll say something on that too, on the COVID-19, the disinfecting. So, as you guys probably experienced firsthand, a lot of people got in the business of disinfecting when COVID hit. You got a lot of, I'm not going to say yahoos, but a lot of people trying to capitalize on the unfortunate events of COVID. We were doing that for the last 40 years. So we have a lot of experience, whether it's COVID or, God forbid, another outbreak that, you know, ever happens in the future. That's something that we've been doing well before this past event, and it was sad for me to see other people, not sad, but I mean, other people try to capitalize on, you know, that event. They were trying to get in the disinfectant business and do all that. But before that happened, we were trained to handle that situation. So when it did happen, we were ready. We actually had to pivot and go different directions.
yeah. So that's our core services on the commercial side. You know, I'll just say briefly that we do have a residential side. It's more focused on those reps, pretty much they call on insurance adjusters and agents. And then we do get a lot of business like 800, you know, the 800 number, Google. And so we have a whole other side that just deals with, you know, just residential homes that way. So, you know, if any of you have any questions on that, I can, offline, I can answer more about that. But it's more or less the same, just on a smaller scale as the commercial. So I don't know, before I go through these questions that Greg put together, does anybody have any questions they wrote down or that they have first? All right, I'll cruise through these then, and yeah, if you have one, just raise your hand. In your experience, what is the biggest misconception people have about the services you provide? I would say that, and again, this is the reason that we did this presentation today, and I'm trying to network a little bit more this year, is because most people just think of service masters as a couple guys in a truck. You know, they go around and they're just basically chasing floods and water losses, and you know, there are people out there that do that, but we just handle so much more that once I start talking to people about what we do, they get kind of excited, you know, because they don't need to go find 2, 3, 4 different providers. And not only do they not have to find 2 or 3 different providers, you know, for essentially what's one job, they can just deal with one person for a larger area if they got more than one geographical area that they're covering. Does Service Master have different business models for different types of disaster response? And the answer to that is yes. We basically have 3 different buckets. I would say we've got our residential side, which I kind of talked about briefly, the commercial side, which I went through, and then our catastrophe side. So each of those could probably be its own separate business if you wanted to peel it off, but we run it all under one. Under the different business models, I answered that one. I'm aware that there are other similar responders for other disasters in the marketplace. Are there disaster response situations where Service Master may refer to another provider? Example, a disaster involving a waterfront building or wharf or pier. You know, that's a really good question. So, almost everything we would do in-house. The only time maybe we would refer you out is, well, shoot. I'll mention one. So, because we do get some oddball requests. We had a request 2 years ago when I was in Louisiana. A guy had a shrimp boat, and he wanted us to restore that. And yeah, and we actually looked at it, right? We looked at maybe getting a crane and everything else, but it turned out his insurance. He didn't invest in the right insurance beforehand. So you know, so occasionally we do get thrown things that we can't do. But the reason I say that is one of our other owners, his name's Jeremiah Cox. He lives over in Vegas, and he's pretty much the quarterback of our catastrophe expeditions. And he'll say, I can solve any problem. In fact, when people ask him what he does, he says, I solve problems. So we like to pride ourselves at our franchise that there isn't really anything that we couldn't do. And then if we looked at it and we had to refer you out, you know, we probably know somebody that would. But hope that answers that question. Let's see. Does Service Master have a minimum disaster which it will or will not provide response services? So that's a great question. I would say that might only apply. I recommend that people, when they have like a smaller loss, especially like I've got some commercial clients that are property managers that have tenants in residential apartment buildings or whatever, or homes, and they may have a mold problem or a water problem. We go in and we dry everything out, we cut out the affected area, but sometimes it's a really small little patch job. And I tell people that you're probably better off just getting a little handyman for that, because like I said, we're a full general contractor. For us to go in, it's very expensive for us to go do a small job, so we could do them, but it's not going to be as fast as if, you know, you just get somebody to come in and, you know, just kind of patch up the drywall. Because a lot of times it's just very minor stuff like that at the very end. And that just saves people time and money. And that would probably be just the only thing I could kind of point to that, you know, we may not be the best at, but there's talking internally of we're looking at solutions for even that, because, you know, we want to always have a comprehensive solution. So, but I would say that's really the only thing, you know. And if it's I would also say for the asbestos, if it is just purely an asbestos job, I'd probably recommend you out. So, although we can do that over in Nevada. And then regarding
so let me ask you a question on asbestos. Yes. On asbestos, I know it's been outlawed in construction materials for a number of years. So what age of a property are you more likely to find asbestos in?
So we do testing on every residential property that's 1978 or before. And residential would be anything 4 units or less in the same building, right? So in other words, you've got a building with more than 5 units in it, then it becomes commercial. So we test anything before that date for residential. On the commercial side, we test everything. Because, you know, Kevin might be able to speak better to this, but, you know, we find, just because it's been outlawed doesn't mean that you don't still find it quite a bit. And that's another great thing about using us, especially in as litigious a state as California. There are a lot of companies out there, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but like let's just say not everybody goes by the book throughout the entire process the way we do. Right, so we do that as designed to protect the tenant, you know, the homeowner, to the property manager, insurance. It's all by the book for a reason. So that's, you know, you have peace of mind working with us on that.
That's not only ceiling tiles, that's insulation, that's floor tiles.
Well, yeah, even drywall has it in it.
Drywall.
Yeah.
Drywall,
And
too,
back
is
east
old.
where they wrap the pipes for winter,
Right.
they used to use asbestos for that.
Yeah.
Popcorn ceilings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, we were talking about mold earlier, and you know, that's as bad as that is. I mean, asbestos too. I mean, all it takes is one incident, and you got a huge lawsuit or something. And so that's our job, is to do things the right way and protect your interests. So. Yeah, so, but we're, like I said, we're in the process of getting that license here.
Do you guarantee that type of work, Dave?
I'm sorry?
Do you guarantee that type of work on mold, asbestos remediation?
Well, so that's what Kevin was saying before, is that we would do post-testing. So we wouldn't, if it was still testing hot, the job's not done.
So you do guarantee it?
Well,
Yeah, well, that's why we recommend, we
Testing,
hire a
yeah.
third-party hygienist to come in and do a post-clearance test.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it gives everyone one more layer of protection, especially what we all do. It's just nice to have that piece of paper and say,
There are no
you know,
guarantees on that.
No.
So, but to your point, I mean, who knows the day after that piece, right? The next day something could happen, but
Yeah,
we
right.
do guarantee it up until,
yeah, we
till
do
that.
that, yeah.
Sure.
And then I noticed, I think I skipped over this, but I've answered this before. How large of a disaster can Service Master be a respondent? Honestly, it could be, you know what? There is no disaster that's too large for us. In fact, Lou today gave me, I talked a few weeks ago, we've got something called a pre-loss agreement. It's free. And what it is, it's an agreement that if you sign up with us, and I've sent copies. Greg's got it on the template on the computer. Did you upload it?
It went out in an eye contact message to everybody, so you could click on the form button or the response button, and it would download the service agreement.
And which
Yeah.
email was that?
Pardon me?
And which email was that?
It has the 3 pictures on it with Disaster Recovery Center, a hurricane, and a crumbling building.
How long ago did you send that?
And then
2 weeks ago.
And then I've got a copy too. I can send it to anybody individually if you want it. Just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. But excuse me,
I'll say something on that too. So, like Abe said, it's not a binding contract. There's no obligation to use us. It's just basically a form. It's just basically a handshake saying, what happens is, if there's a large event in California, for example, let's say there's an earthquake.
That's what I was going to, yeah.
Tonight, right? Every restoration company has capacity. Like at some point, you're going to be picking the phone up and say, "Hey, I got a problem." They're going to be like, "We're at capacity. We don't have any more manpower, any more trucks." Like when a large event happens, whether it's in Florida or California or an earthquake, there's going to come a time where every restoration company in that event is at full capacity, and they're going to say, "We're 2 weeks out." What this does is prioritize who's ever in our system already. So when you call us, we pull up your name, your company, and say, "Cool,
Yeah.
we're prioritized." So that and I've been through a few of these where we've had to prioritize certain clients, and no one likes doing that, because you want to help everybody, but the reality is you can't. So that's all that is. Again, there's no cost for it. It's not legally binding. You don't have to use us. It's just saying when you do call us, we pull it up and say, "Yep, we have a priority service agreement signed with y'all, and we're going to prioritize you."
Does that apply to residential as well?
It does, yeah. It's basically everything. And again, I've been through a few events where nothing's worse than turning down work. No one likes doing that, but everyone hits their max.
Yeah.
And even we're one of the big guys, and we've hit our max.
Yeah, Kevin, floods and fires in California aren't enough. You gotta bring in an earthquake.
Sorry,
We don't have enough, we don't have enough trouble already?
I didn't want to jinx us.
Oh, okay.
You forgot about the mudslides. That's our other
yeah,
fourth
right.
season.
Yeah, that's part of the floods, yeah.
Well, the reason though the earthquake though is a perfect example is because that will pretty much affect everybody and everybody's going to want help. And like Kevin said, most of our competitors out there, they're going to get attacked pretty quickly, whereas we've got a whole team nationwide that goes elsewhere to help with hurricanes. Well, guess what? They're coming here now to help us, and they're asking us who needs help, and we've got that list of that priority response agreements. Those are the first ones being worked. And like Kevin said, it's non-binding, it's free. And of course the idea is we would love your business in the meantime, so please don't wait for a natural disaster. Any of the other things I talked about today, obviously we would love that business too. Let's see here. Regarding responding to an individual where there may be an insurance damage claim filed, does the insurance carrier dictate to the policyholder who the disaster responding service is to be used by the property owner? The answer to that is no. The policyholder is always the customer. They can make the final decision, and we work for the customer. Some insurance companies have different restoration providers that they like to work with, that they maybe prefer, but ultimately, or that they might recommend. But even if that's the case, it's always, you're the one paying the invoice. You can tell them, no, I want to use whoever I want.
Can I say something on that too? It brings up a really good point. There are certain insurance companies. We're a preferred vendor or provider for all the large insurance companies. So there are certain requirements that we have to adhere to get on that program, whether it's State Farm, Farmers, AAA, whatever. So when you do have if it is a homeowner loss or commercial, like Abe said, they might recommend somebody, but we are the preferred vendor for all the large insurance carriers, so.
Well, it's like when you have an accident with your car, if you
Exactly.
have Mercury Insurance,
Exactly.
Mercury's gonna say, please go to a Mercury Center and have our adjuster
Go
meet
to
you there and
Go to
do
Caliber.
it. But you don't have to have your car repaired there, you
Correct.
can take it anywhere you want
Yeah.
with that estimate and
Correct.
get it repaired.
It's your choice, like Abe
Right.
said.
Yeah. That would be against the law if they
Yeah.
force you to use them.
Yeah. Oh, and and while that came up with the insurance, all of our pricing actually is kind of determined based on that. It's all standardized and it's all based on a program called Xactimate and then just industry standardized. So I actually have a copy of our price list too. It's pretty exhaustive. If you want a copy of that, I can always email it to you. But it's pretty much the same thing that goes to all the insurance companies as well. So that's one nice thing about working with is the standardized pricing. When considering a response such as cleanup and commencement of restoration, how can Service Master help the property owner return to prior disaster status? So this is a good one. When I mentioned those fires up in Laguna Niguel last May, I went up there with one of our other techs to visit a house that it didn't really have any visible damage on the house itself. It had some damage like in the flower bed outside. There was some smoke damage on the inside. He was trying to figure out whether or not he should even file a claim. And so, we've got the ability to go in and we even do free assessments where we could go meet with homeowners and talk about like what's your deductible and maybe look at a ballpark of what it's going to cost for you to have that done in your house, and so you can make a decision on whether or not you even want to file a claim with your insurance. Just maybe go direct with us, but we're really good about kind of giving, putting everything on the table so then you can make your best decision. Because some people, you might have $1,000 deductible, or it might be $5,000 deductible, for damage on your house, or it might be 15. I mean, I saw one recently. I think it was like 25,000. I think it was in Laguna Beach. Yeah. So that's the thing is that for deductibles and your insurance, you want to look at that.
Yeah, you mentioned renter's insurance earlier.
Yeah.
I know they have renter's insurance with Airbnb and VRBO and all that, but the deductibles are ridiculous.
Yeah. So, but you can adjust.
$15,000.
It could be. So I have a renter's insurance with State Farm, which is who I do my auto policy, and I just bundle it.
And the landlord has to pay that.
No, I pay it.
The tenant wouldn't pay that.
Oh, well, I'm the tenant, and I pay. Me personally, I pay for renter's insurance.
He's saying the landlord paid for
If
the,
there was
for the fire and
damage.
the mold.
Oh, if there was damage.
Yeah,
Yeah. If there was damage,
but
they never pay.
correct.
But here's the other thing, though, is that but they might pay for contents or to move them out of the unit for Airbnb. So I have seen that.
Loss of use.
Yeah, so loss of use. So I'm sorry, William, I was thinking through your question. So yeah, because it's a great question. So you could have actually that happen. Say you have I saw this happen at a condo actually in Laguna Niguel, and the HOA paid for part of the fire damage, but his personal renter's policy kicked in to give him a place to stay because the HOA wasn't going to pay for that, and they were maybe not going to pay for part of the content. So it's basically like having two spouses both having insurance. You got double coverage. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, the property owners always have to have their own insurance, regardless of what they require of the tenant. And then the tenant has to have renter's insurance. You gotta make sure that renter insurance includes the property owner as an additional insured, because otherwise the two policies don't work together.
Right.
So it's no longer $25 a month. It's more like by the time you lower the deductible, and the landlord has to pay his portion, and they pay their portion, it ends up being like about $75 to $100 a month.
Okay. All I know is I pay. I think it's $17 a month that I pay for my renter's insurance. I think so if my place burned down, I'd get like a check for $50,000, and I think my deductible is it's definitely not more than $1,000. I think it's $500. That's with State Farm. But,
Property owners always have to cover the structure.
The structure.
The structure and the integrity, which includes the roof and the walls, and
The plumbing.
But it's just not one
Yeah,
policy, it's two. And it's,
But there's another
the
component
deductibles.
on that renter's insurance. If you're renting a property or tenants in a property, whether it's commercial or residential, and their personal vehicle gets destroyed in that property, your auto insurance will cover it, but if you have renter's insurance, it covers the vehicle. I used to be an insurance adjuster, I know
It
that.
should be like an insurance trivia.
If it's in a garage, but what if it's a
It doesn't
open
matter,
space?
it doesn't matter if it's on the property itself, where you're renting, whether you're a tenant in an office building or a tenant in an apartment building, in your personal vehicle or your vehicles, they are covered if there's damage, a catastrophe to that real property. And if you pay renter's insurance, a renter insurance covers the vehicles, because auto insurers won't cover the damage of a parked vehicle on a property.
Yeah, vandalism's not covered.
So I'm just saying that you gotta think about these things, even when in your commercial buildings, you have tenants in there, you know.
Might be worth doing some research on renter's insurance, if it affects you, is maybe the point.
Yeah.
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 I don't
Because there's
know
a lot
of
to
a lease, an AR, or, I don't use CAR, I use AIR leases, but I don't know of an AR lease that does not require the tenant to have their own insurance.
Correct.
I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a rental house or whether they're a unit in a shopping center, they all have to have their own insurance.
But the thing is with their own insurance, their vehicle insurer will not cover a loss parked on the property they're renting.
And I know we had one unit in an industrial building that I managed, that they decided they wanted to go into a welding business. And then they had to go into a special insurance for explosive gases.
Yeah.
But we required them to have that.
Yeah.
Because if they blow up their unit, they're gonna blow up our building.
Right.
And if it's short-term housing, then they triple it. So
Interesting.
it's probably where I'm getting the $100.
Yeah, it could be. Well, then just really quick, last question I got here is, and then we're right at time, so that's perfect. Does Service Master have specifically trained team supervision to handle situations where
Thank you.
asbestos, lead, chemicals, biological debris, etc. are involved? Yes, in fact, this kind of falls underneath the hoarding. So in each of these situations, we've got basically teams will go in, and you've seen those hazmat suits. We got people that go in that will treat any situation like that. Does anybody have any specific questions or anything I covered?
I've got one final one. How can Service Master be the go-to partner for commercial real estate brokers, such as, can Service Master help a real estate broker with a client who has property requiring pre-listing readiness by removing harmful conditions such as mold, etc., during the restoration process?
That's a long question. Can you repeat that? You lost me. Let me read that. It was a good one, but, okay. It's a really good question, Greg. I honestly, over the past year, I actually do get a pretty significant amount of phone calls from commercial real estate brokers, and a lot of them, they come in through the people we do testing with. So they will be going out and testing a property, for example, and then they give us a call. And that seems to be how I've been introduced to most of the commercial real estate agents. Other than that, I think for this, I need to just continue what I was talking about. There's a couple commercial real estate groups I'm networking with, continue advertising with them, and then.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This happened just a few days ago. We came into our dining room and there was a piece of the I don't know what it's called. It's not drywall, but the ceiling part had just collapsed on the dining table.
The ceiling tiles?
Huh?
The ceiling tiles?
In a house.
Okay.
In our house. And then under where it fell down, I noticed that it was a dark strip like there, just a small thing like this. But then we called people to come out and I thought it's raining. Maybe they have to tarp it if they can't fix it right away or something. But I was thinking, how fast does it get mold? Like within a couple of days?
So you said you saw a black strip?
Yeah.
That might be mold right now. I mean,
Oh,
I do
really?
want to get
Because it's a
somebody in there
tile
to
roof.
test it.
So I thought, I wonder if it had a leak, we just never saw it.
Yeah, if your ceiling tile fell down, it's usually something that causes it to fall down.
So,
Yeah, I would say I would get it tested right away.
yeah, okay.
And I know a mold testing company. If you want, I can get it to you. I'll text it to you. The contact card after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, he's a friend of Kevin's. He's known him since he was a kid. So.
Well, my sister called the insurance company and, because we live together, and they said, well, we'll be out there next week. She said, next week? She says, if it rains this week, we're gonna have all this, water coming through. So, I don't know, she called a few people and somebody's coming out today to tarp it.
Good.
Until they can get out and, check the tiles and pull the tiles off, whatever they do to
Yeah.
fix the roof. But there was no indication. I mean, there was no spot, no nothing. It was just, came in, and all this stuff is on the dining room table.
No, that happens. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many phone calls I get Monday mornings, and they walked in, everything was fine when they left Friday. When they left, turn off the lights, and they walk in Monday morning, and stuff like that just happens.
Oh. Okay.
I think it's the second law of thermodynamics, right? Everything falls apart.